Talk to me first about your strategy overall when you're doing these drafts.
So I don't come in with a set strategy going into the lobby. Most of the time, it's indicative of your draft spot and where you're drafting. But as far as these early drafts go, the first thing you want to do is just start hammering out these rookies because they're going to be the ones that jump up the most on the board. Even just this week, you're seeing some massive swings in ADP, but I can't tell you that I'm going to go into this every draft going zero RB, hero RB. It's a lot of times just what the draft gives me. And yeah, I'm sort of trying to get different starts in these drafts because, like I said, the ADPs right now are going to be nothing like they are, even in, next week or so. I want to sort of mix in different builds, but I say for the most part, I definitely lean wide receiver heavy. So maybe take one running back in the first 5-ish rounds or zero running back, especially with the way lobbies are right now. You can get some pretty solid running backs in the later round. Like Joe Mixon, he goes in round 7 or 8, and I'm comfortable just not getting a running back until round 8 and grab Joe Mixon as my RB1. So you definitely just got to play the board a bit right now.
And I think that's perfect advice for everybody. You have a strategy in your head of things that maybe you feel comfortable doing, but let the draft fall to you. Every draft is different. Kind of like what you talked about the Eagles. They didn't do anything spectacular really in that draft. They let the value fall to them and they traded up in some spots, but they ended up taking best player available at certain points. I wanted to talk to you about the zero RB because last year, guys like in that dead zone, like Miles Sanders, Josh Jacobs, especially Sanders, this guy was an 8th round pick, and then he came out on social media and told everybody not to draft him, and then he turned out to be like a 10th or 11th round pick. And I even saw Kenneth Gainwell in some drafts go ahead of Miles Sanders, which is crazy. And he ends up having a career season. And if you had him, with that value and where you took him in drafts, you were certainly on your way. So are you looking to stack? Is that something you really want to do? You want to have 2 stacks at least? Are you trying to pair up 2 wide receivers with a cornerback, or are you taking a tight end late? Like, talk to me about stacking and how beneficial it can be in what is a tournament like this where you're competing against lots of people. You want to maximize your upside.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm this is a hot take or something, but Best Ball Mania will not be won without a stack. Like there's just no way you can win this tournament without a stack. First off, the reason we stack in DFS formats is because the points are correlated. When your pass catcher is scoring points, it's the quarterback is scoring points as well. Those points are correlated together. It is a little bit different on DraftKings as far as PPR goes. Wide receiver can catch a bunch of passes, but that makes stacking even more critical in best ball when it's so touchdown heavy. Again, like I said, if your pass catcher is scoring points, hopefully they're scoring touchdowns. The quarterback inevitably has to score points there. So it's really just impossible for me to see that any of the top finishes have an unstacked roster. And also, as far as season long goes, we want to be stacking teams, not just games, because it's sort of limiting the things that we have to get right. We want to make a bet on the entire makeup of the team. Seattle was a team, their win total last year was what, 5.5?
Yeah,
somewhere around there. Yeah, and it's like if you just loaded up on these Seattle guys, and maybe during the draft room you hated Seattle, but say DK Metcalf fell at a value, and then you sort of start building out your Seattle bet, even though you don't love it. Maybe you don't love Tyler Lockett, but he was there around 110, and you just sort of roll with the draft room like, hey, in this draft, I'm just betting on Seattle. If they're bad, they're bad. This is a wasted entry essentially. But what if Seattle hits and I got all these players way below ADP, and then you have a monster team right there. So it's sort of being comfortable, being uncomfortable in a sense. And like I said, the reason we stack is because we're limiting everything that we need to hit on. You make a bet on a team, and all you're relying on is a team being good, and then you capture all of their points.
Exactly. And, last year I thought that Jared Goff and the Lions were a pretty good stack. Jared Goff was going as like quarterback 23, 25, and like he ended up finishing as a top 12 quarterback in fantasy. So you mentioned stacks, got to do it. I agree with you. I knew you would go that way. Let's get a couple late, because it's easy to sit here and say, Philly, it's tough. Like you may not get a Jalen Hurts and a Devontae with AJ Brown. You may not be able to get a Chase and a Higgins with Burrow, or a Kelsey and a Mahomes, or a Diggs and and a Josh Allen, I think it's easier to stack KC because they do have multiple wide receivers that you can get a little bit later on, but you do want Kelsey in that stack. So those stacks are obvious. Those are the most explosive teams in the NFL. You talked about Seattle last year. Are there any teams, like as of right now, are there any stacks that you feel like are pretty good value that you can get late, but you feel like will rise up and also could return value? And I'm assuming your answer will be some of these, teams in the bottom 10 of the league overall, but could provide some value for you.
Yeah, I mean, how about a guy that we just talked about, Jordan Addison? Like he was going in the pit 90 to 100-ish range, and it was actually pretty perfect. That's around where Kirk Cousins was going. So depending on where you pick, if you have back-to-back picks, you could have double tapped Kirk Cousins and Jordan Addison. So that's one that I got pretty early exposure to. Addison's creeping up a little bit, but it's going to take time for his ADP to actually adjust. So that's still one that I want to go after. And I do like TJ Hawkinson's ADP. I believe it's sort of, I want to say it's like mid fourth round right now. So that's a stack without, I mean, don't get me wrong. If I have the 101, I'll take Justin Jefferson all the time. If you missed out on Justin Jefferson and you want to go with Hawkinson, Addison, and Cousins, I think that's a great cheap stack right there. And the most recent game we saw, I guess the last couple of games, Justin Jefferson was sort of quiet, but Kirk Cousins was hitting his ceiling. TJ Hawkinson had a monster game. He went off. And, Kirk Cousins got even a rushing touchdown in the Giants game, I want to say. So you can hit your ceiling with these guys like Kirk Cousins without just because you miss out on Justin Jefferson. So, yeah, like I said, that's a stack that I really like. And I think these rookie quarterbacks, I think that's probably the stack that I'm targeting the most. A lot of time they're my secondary or tertiary stack. But you got Anthony Richardson. Well, as far as his ADP goes, I want to say he opened up around the 140-ish, 150 range. So my first three drafts, it was as soon as I got to pick 100, 120, it was Anthony Richardson every time. So you could go Anthony Richardson whenever you had to draft him. And then Jelani Woods is always available in the last round. Josh Downs was available in the last round. And even now, he's like a 17th round pick, I want to say. So that's so stacked that I like. And one thing to keep in mind is this is sort of I'm going to touch on this in the best ball guide that will come out soon. Is you don't ever want to reach too far out of ADP. But as far as Richardson go, I want to say the first draft I took him at 125, and his ADP was 150. But you got to consider that this isn't an accurate ADP right now. When you go into drafts, he's sort of in the 70 to 80 range. So it looked like a reach at the time, but it's insane value right now. So you'll see the rookies will be the most mispriced. So as far as reaching for players goes, it's okay to reach for rookies. I'd say maybe for the next 2 weeks or so because their ADPs are going to take a while to actually get efficient. And then the other two rookies, Young and Stroud, I mean, their pass catchers are all going in the double-digit rounds from 14 plus. So I like the Carolina stack. You can go – I guess Thielen is probably the earliest, and then I want to say it's Young, Chark, Mingo. But all these guys are available around 13, 14 on. And CJ Stroud, there's no Texans pass catcher that has an ADP high at all. So you take CJ Stroud, and you can tack on Nico Collins, John Mechie if you're comfortable with that. Robert Woods, tack him on, Dalton Schultz. So I like a lot of these value stacks right now for sure.
I love it. Tank Dell is interesting to me as well.
Oh, yeah.
If Richardson plays 14 games, I have a hard time believing that he won't flirt with top 10 status or top 12 status given his rushing upside as well. So I love it. Dude, we got to get out of here. Unfortunately, there is a quick question. If you have 30 seconds, I don't want to put you on the spot, but any thoughts here on what Mark Carr is bringing up? Any thoughts on if Kirk or Ridley will be used more and which is a better stack with T-Law? Any ideas on where those wide receivers are being drafted just quickly on your way out here on the Jags offense?
Oh, yeah. I think Christian Kirk is an incredible value right now. I do love Ridley, but he's going, I want to say around pick 38 or so. And Christian Kirk is going beyond pick 55. So as for you can, that's another stack that I really like. You can double tap Christian Kirk and Trevor Lawrence back to back. And I think in a vacuum, if you told me who's going to be the wide receiver one, I guess I would side Calvin Ridley just because we've seen a longer sample size of Ridley. But I'm drafting Christian Kirk every time at that. most part their production will be similar, and their ADP are nowhere close at all. So yeah, in a vacuum, I guess really, but I can't pay that price, so I'd stack it with Kirk as much as possible.